Says I'm uploading.
Yep. I see it on Switch.
Good deal. So we are live.
Perfect.
Gotta love it, guys. Got to love it. And I want to go and validate my shelf. Yep. We are live. Awesome, guys. So, got a fun little episode for us today. I'm Brad Medlin.
I'm Chris Touchberry.
That's right. I was making sure you said your name first. We are not your typical IT guys, and this is a workstation and work tech podcast. So I'm going to call it a video podcast. It's that too. Today we're talking about working smart and not working hard. And what we mean by that is understanding the differences between professional, consumer, what is prosumer for that instance as well, even. And lastly, what's data center, CPUs, GPUs, all of that, which can be very confusing, especially depending on who you're buying from. Luckily, some people make things a little easier, but even Intel has, between having Xeon and Core, really confuses you with things like Xeon W and Xeon D and Xeon Scalable. And you can get Xeon Scalable in a workstation, but Xeon W also goes in a workstation, and how it all lines up and how it can compare to everybody. So we're going to start talking about things a little bit differently today than we have been in the past. We're gonna kind of dive right into what differences are. Other things we're going to cover, the differences in RAM. There's a lot to go on between ECC and non-ECC. What is UDIMM? What is RDIMM? What is LRDIMM? How does that matter to you? Why does that matter to you? What is Optane DIMM? I mean, people have heard of Optane SSDs, but a lot of people probably haven't heard of Optane DIMM memory. So there's a lot to talk about, and we're going to kind of dive right in here momentarily. We're also going to give some updates from some previous episodes where we'll kind of cover some things there. Don't have any questions right now, but anybody that wants to jump into the Discord is welcome to jump in and shoot a question out to us, and we'll gladly do that. Our link tree is going to be linked in the chat. So if you're looking for that, get on board, say hello, start the chat up with us, and it'll be a fun little conversation. Feel free, like we said, to join the Discord or send us an email. Even if you send us an email during the show, we'll be checking those too. So feel free to just make your way in and have a fun little conversation with us all. But we are here and we are live. We are looking forward to this. So I just noticed we actually picked up quite a few new folks online in the Discord. So that's awesome.
Oh, cool. I'm not watching that. That's cool.
I normally don't watch that, but I haven't watched it in a few days, so I'm back into it now though. So glad to see some more people in there. Oh, got to get the right one. Got to use my right keyboard. Yeah, I mean, obviously we've got time to talk, so it's not too big a deal. I have one of those Logitech options keyboards. Highly recommend them for people that use multiple machines at one time. Yeah, it's got three actual, there's just above, you're right next to your function keys and above your insert home buttons normally. Yeah. There's a 1, 2, and a 3, and those are to quickly switch between devices 1, 2, and 3. And as a matter of fact, I can show you this. So this is the mouse here, and that button there will allow you to do the same thing. Well, of course it likes to switch on me, but yeah, there's a little button right there that'll let you switch between 1, 2, and 3 different devices on your mouse.
Huh.
And they all, and see, that's the nice thing about them though. I mean, everybody always talks about the Razer and the Logitech's got one as well for gaming.
Corsair has a keyboard with like 9 or 10 macro keys on the left side, but that's not exactly a switchable model. It's just
this literally switches between devices. So you have like the little Logitech unifying receiver.
Yep.
And you can either pair it to 3 Logitech unifying receivers, which the receivers you get one receiver with the mouse and one receiver with the keyboard. And so right there is 2 different devices and then 2 different desktops. And if you had a laptop, for instance, you just pair it with Bluetooth. So it pairs with Bluetooth or with the unifying receiver. I know I'm thinking about Logitech has like their lightning connection thing or whatever they call it for their gaming mice, the G series. It's supposed to be for like super fast, FPS and whatnot on the mouse, which DPI, make sure that the connections, polling speeds and so that are really fast. It's not necessarily necessary for not something that's necessary for work related stuff, but it is a pretty cool thing. I mean, and being able to, you probably remember the old, what do you call those things, Chris? Gosh, the little things that connected 2 devices together. Wasn't a switch. It was a like you could connect 2 monitors to it and it connected to one monitor and a mouse and keyboard and it connected to 2 computers.
A KVM switch?
That's it. KVM switch. It is a KVM switch. Yeah, like you had like a KVM switch. This basically, the one thing I always hated about KVM switches is whenever you switched, there was actually a physical time between connections. Since these are paired either via Bluetooth or the unifying receiver, the switch between devices is instant. So there is no lag delay switching between devices. And because, most of the time you don't need multi-monitor support for this, like if you have like one monitor's here, the other monitor's here, kind of deal, you don't really need, you've got one thing on one monitor and one thing on another monitor. You're not really switching the monitor very often. Like I literally used to use a KVM switch and never change monitors. Like it was like the KVM switch was so I could just seamlessly turn over and go, okay, here, I want to work on my laptop for a minute. Let me do this here. Done. And then switch it back. But it just took forever to poll between them. I used to hate that crap. But yeah, that's a very, very intriguing story to say. Yes. I have to say I do like the option setup. And I think a lot more Logitech devices are coming with that kind of built-in. It's almost like its own built-in KVM, but it is what it is. We can talk about those later if somebody ever wanted to talk about them. I'm sure right now they don't really care. But we will do some updates from back to the original thought. We're going to do some updates from last week. We have some more information on Tiger Lake and another SKU of Tiger Lake that's out. One that makes Rocket Lake look even more silly. We're going to talk about the 3080 Ti coming out. We're going to talk about LHR and its hardware lock, which is tied directly to CUDA, and how that could affect people in the workplace in the future. Right now, NVIDIA has come out and very clearly stated that the CUDA lock for LHR is purely for cutting down on crypto mining on these GPUs. However, we do want to make it, I want to make it very clear. CUDA is what is used by most work applications and OpenCL. And I've heard that people are trying to develop the OpenCL workaround, and the OpenCL workaround that they're working on for this hardware lock and this LHR lock is basically no longer using CUDA to do the actual work of crypto mining, but moving it over to OpenCL which would be a very big difference. It basically, since the lock is only in CUDA, it could actually affect some things. So, so yeah, let's get into this.
Sounds good.
I know. Wow, that was a very long intro just to say let's get into this. So first and foremost, understanding the difference between consumer and prosumer and professional and data center, just general understandings. Consumer grade parts are things like Ryzen CPUs, Athlon CPUs, Celeron Intel CPUs, the Intel Core series, Ryzen and Athlon being AMD. AMD has the Radeon consumer series GPUs. NVIDIA has their GeForce line. They have prosumer lines too. So a prosumer is basically something that's going to be kind of in between a consumer and an actual, professional. And why prosumer tends to be the term people use is it generally means like it's designed for somebody that is operating a small business by themselves, that doesn't want to spend too much money on something, but needs the horsepower, if that makes any sense. It would be what we would consider in the CPU line. Prosumer is really what's more along the lines of high-end desktop, or HEDT. You'll hear that mentioned a lot tonight. Additionally, and so when we say that, you'll hear like the Core X series from Intel, and you'll hear like the Threadripper line from AMD. Yep. Professional it's very difficult to describe why prosumer is different than professional, because HEDT does technically fit into the professional world.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot
Very
of
easily.
Even Dell, for instance, a lot of workstations, which everybody consider, when you hear the term workstation, that's usually considered a professional product. Now, there are plenty of small form factor workstations, which is the best way to word them. Small form factor being like a tiny desktop, something that is very small, very compact in space. Yeah. And a professional, so a workstation in that sense usually comes with consumer chips in it. So obviously you can kind of see why is all of these things the same? A lot of times you can get Xeons in those, but they're not like Xeon scalable chips or Threadripper Pro type chips. They're going to be Xeon D. Yep. Actually, I want to look that up real quick, because isn't there another line besides Xeon D while I'm thinking about that?
I'm remembering the Xeon E, but that was Skylake.
Well, E had the E3, the E5,
Yeah, it was a lower power. I think that they rebranded Xeon E to Xeon D, maybe. But Xeon D,
Xeon E
Workstation, small.
They do. So they have the Xeon E series, Chris.
Yep.
Now they don't have them anymore, but I believe they were all like embedded processors. That's what E stood for. Yep.
That would make sense.
They were embedded processors that were like Coffee Lake or whatnot. They're 14 nanometer old SKUs, so they're nothing new in the E segment. They've kind of rolled E into the Xeon D family.
The Xeon D may also be integrated, because I just found this Supermicro board on Amazon, which is an SoC.
Oh, I just realized something too. Xeon D doesn't exist anymore. It's either Xeon W or Xeon Scalable. And the way
basically just omit everything we just talked about.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Wow. So you have So Xeon W now, I have to say now because this makes no sense why they've made all these changes. Xeon W now scales with the processors that are out there. And it did start with the 10 series. So I should have thought about that. So the Xeon W that I have in a laptop now is the the Xeon W 10885M processor, which is basically the 10980 HK consumer chip, the mobile chip. And they have the new W series. Man, that's going to confuse so many people.
And Intel still has the Xeon E and the Xeon D on their website.
Yes, they do have them. But if you go look at the most recent launch dates, they don't have anything there. Everything's in Xeon W or Scalable. So Scalable, we'll get into that more in a minute. So, right, and here's where things get even more confusing. So AMD has 3 lines. They have Ryzen, Threadripper, and Epic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Ryzen has a Ryzen Pro version. And we're going to cover what's Ryzen Pro. How's that really different?
Yep.
Threadripper has Threadripper Pro. And Epic is purely just server-based chips.
Epic doesn't have Pro.
It doesn't have a Pro SKU, but it is something we'll have to talk about momentarily. Because Epic is supposed to compare with Xeon Scalable, and that's really not something that's an easy comparison. So, yeah. I mean, you're going to have to bear with us with that just a little bit.
And how would you? So we have a line under professional for data center. I feel like that's only for GPU, and now that line is really blurred because of how NVIDIA rebranded.
Not necessarily, actually. Data center actually has gotten a little easier to understand. So to use NVIDIA's and so from a pure data center perspective, before we really dive into the CPUs, GPUs, RAM, so on and so forth. So from a data center perspective, AMD is purely the Epic side. And coming from someone who has asked Lenovo's and Dell's and HP's of the world to create me a dual socket Epic workstation, like you can buy a dual socket Xeon workstation, and they just aren't going to do it right now. It's kind of funny, and we're going to get into some of the downsides of that on AMD's part here in the near future, because as Intel climbs back with their Ice Lake Xeons that are out and the 8380 and such, as they climb back with those, there is going to be a point in time where you can actually get more performance out of a dual socket Xeon for a workstation than you can from a single socket Threadripper Pro. Now, not many people are going to spend that much money on a workstation, but there are IT professionals and procurement folks out there that go, oh, somebody said they need the best. Well, I can get 80 cores and 160 threads in this Dell Precision Tower with the dual socket Xeon. I can only get 64 cores and threads with Threadripper Pro.
That's just math.
Well, and mathematically right now, which it's expensive as all get out to do, but mathematically, that's actually a much higher performing machine. I don't know how many of you watched Lisa Sue's presentation. Some of our, the audience watched Lisa Sue's presentation the other day, but she started talking about the differences in comparing the Epic chips to Xeon Scalable 8380s. And hidden in that message is something not a lot of people probably caught. And I guarantee you 90% of the people out there that listen to us probably wouldn't have noticed it at first glance. And that is, she says, okay, so we have a dual socket, 64 core chip with 128 threads per chip. So you got 256 threads versus a dual 8380 platform that has 80 cores and 160 threads. So just that simple math alone says that core differences are 1.6%, 160% more cores in the dual socket Epic system. Now, that's great. But Lisa Sue said that in the performance testing they had, they were only 150% faster. So that means that Intel actually has a leg to stand on currently in 10th gen chips, comparing to 7 nanometer chips, which we all knew they're the same. 10th gen, 10 nanometer Intel is the same as 7 nanometer TSMC.
Yep.
And so we know this now, and now we're all of a sudden going, okay, so at a core per core comparison, right, dropping it down, Intel is about 5% better. I mean, that's not a huge step, but it is a step. And it does lead to say, hey, we got a little bit going on for us now. Just keep your eyes peeled, see some of those things. And that's it's sneaky. It's going to sneak up on us. But what I was hinting at before is if you have that kind of per core performance, the 8380 doesn't clock as high as their 32 core can clock. So in theory, a dual socket 32 core machine, so that would be 64 cores, 128 threads, paired against a single socket Threadripper Pro, which maxes out at 64 cores and 128 threads because it's only single socket. The Intel machine's going to be 10 to 15% faster than Threadripper Pro. That's kind of scary to think about right now. And, you know, you and I, Chris, were talking about this the other day. I don't want to dive too deep down this road, but yes, dual socket machines from in a Xeon scalable platform are technically more expensive. However, the largest cost right now, and we'll get down this road even further here in a few minutes, is RAM.
Yep.
You know, everybody says, well, RAM's pretty cheap for most DIMMs. That's correct for UDIMM, which is unregistered non-ECC memory.
Just a normal DIMM.
Your normal gaming type machine or consumer type machine is going to come with non-ECC memory. And what we mean by ECC is error correcting code. But I'll explain that, what that means later. But the actual point that I'm getting at is Intel in its setup, because it's dual socket, means that it's going to have 16 DIMMs to work with, first off. So the price difference between ECC between a 64 gig DIMM and a 128 gig DIMM is unbelievable right now.
I'm actually looking that up right now to see what it is. Let's see.
I think the last time I checked, Chris, a 512 gig kit of 64 gig, and you're about to find out. So I'll just let you tell us here in just a second, but I'll continue down this route.
ECC registered biggest module that doesn't have a price. That is super slow. I'm just gonna get a new egg.
That's the way I always do it.
Hot PC part picker doesn't do ECC RAM.
Yeah, but the flip side to it is Intel also has Optane DIMMs. And while Optane is not as fast as regular ECC memory, like you can't get 3200 megahertz, 3200 mega transfer, whatever you want to call it, ECC RAM, you can get, it is equivalent to like 2400 megahertz or 2666. Somebody explained it to me before. It's not quite as fast, obviously. But a 256 DIMM Optane or 128 DIMM Optane DIMM is far cheaper per gigabyte than 128 gig ECC DIMM is.
All right. So this is a Samsung kit. So a Samsung kit of 2x32 gig DDR4 2666 ECC registered is $500. Now I can get a 2x32 kit of faster memory, non-ECC for less than $500. I can almost guarantee you that.
Absolutely.
You look that up. So this is a 2x32 of. So I can get a 2x32 of 3200 for $297, which is that's like 40% less. But it's not ECC.
So, 230. Yeah. So I'm going to give you the easy comparison. I'm going to use Dell.
Okay.
I'm sitting at Dell's website, so I'm going to go pick 100. I'm going to go pick a terabyte of memory and 128 gig sticks. All right. Now I'm going to go pick a terabyte of memory in Optane, which is really the comparison we need to make.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a far more understandable comparison. And as a matter of fact, just on Dell's website, a terabyte of 64 gig DIMMs versus a terabyte of 128 gig DIMMs is a $14,000 difference. That's on Dell's website, guys. Look it up yourself.
I wonder if that's partially attributed to what's going on right now in the market.
I don't know.
I don't know.
So I'll put it to you this way: a terabyte of
Good Lord. Let's see, a 128 gig.
Wow. I need to look at that again. Hang on. I'm not doing the right measurement there. I need to look at a terabyte of 2666. No, that's the same price.
A 2 by 128 gig of 2933 ECC is 3600.
Yeah.
On Newegg.
It's expensive. It's expensive.
That's 2 sticks.
So a terabyte of so here's something that'll give you a better explanation. A terabyte of 4. Keep this in mind. This is 4 256 gig Optane DIMMs plus 632 gig DDR4 DIMMs, right? So basically, to fill your channels up properly, it'd be 1 terabyte and 128 gigabytes of 1.12 or whatever you want to say it. Terabytes of memory is $10,000 less. And if I do 128 gig 128 gig Optane DIMMs with 12 16 gig DIMMs associated with it, so the exact same amount, almost 19.5 cheaper.
So Optane drops cost quite a bit over RAM.
Yes. So basically, going with Optane, getting a terabyte of Optane memory and that's in the 128 sticks, guys, and getting another 128 gigs of non-Optane memory to go with that, you're looking at basically $5,000 cheaper than going with 16 gig DIMMs. And once again, the whole point that I was getting at just there was you've got more DIMMs in dual socket configurations. So you can actually probably bring those prices closer in line with each other fairly quickly. Now, said all that to say this: data center is EPYC only for AMD. Xeon Scalable is also the data center. Now, Ice Lake Xeons will not be something you really find in data center initially. So most data center configurations are quad socket or more, and that means 4 physical processors per socket, y'all. So, and it's not 4U. That's the U is the actual height size of the rack it might go in, but 4 physical CPU sockets for whatever number crunching it has to do. All right. And it doesn't matter that. Ice Lake Xeon only supports 2 sockets. So it is primarily aimed at workstations, and will be coming out later in a few months for workstations, and will be competitive with Threadripper Pro workstations. Now, Threadripper Pro is still going to be cheaper overall, probably, but they're going to be very close in price with that Optane option, and as well as being able to have 16 at least 16 DIMMs available, and having 16 DIMMs available, meaning that you can go from, for a terabyte of memory, you can go from 8 128 gig sticks to 16 64 gigs and save some money that way. So there's options there that will make things cheaper. But so we kind of covered what's data center, and we'll get into it a little bit more. The final thing that we're going to kind of talk about is like branded versus a custom machine. What's, when you're looking at buying something like that, and from a working smart, not hard perspective, is it easier to buy a workstation customized, or is it smarter to go buy a branded system from Dell? The answer is 99.9% of the time, going to be custom will always be cheaper, because you're not paying the markup that the branded companies are going to give you for, assembly and so on and so forth. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's always cheaper, but it decent percentage of the time. And then we'll look at, whole machine workstations. So laptops, desktops, rack setups. And rack setups are what everybody uses a lot these days, to just take a bunch of these machines, network them together, and slide them into a rack. So there's a lot of options and opportunities. Now we're going to get into the nitty gritty. So we've kind of got this we've kind of started this discussion already, and I kind of want to give everyone a little bit of a rundown, let everybody kind of understand the whole setups of what we're talking about. Pro processors from Ryzen. So AMD has two lines for their Ryzen processors. They have the Ryzen R9, R7, R5, and then they have Ryzen 5 Pro, Ryzen 7 Pro, Ryzen 9 Pro.
They don't have a 9 Pro.
That's right. Well, the 7 Pro, the biggest thing that you're going to guarantee with a Pro processor is it's going to have integrated graphics. All right, that's coming. They get the newest SKUs, the Ryzen 5 and 7 Pros, and that they just launched in the 5000 series. The graphics buffer that it borrows from direct RAM is up now to 4 gigs. So it means that it makes 3D modeling and rendering a little bit easier. Most of these things are designed and aimed at laptops. So Ryzen Pro and Ryzen processors that are for work, when you buy a laptop, you really usually want integrated graphics. And in wanting integrated graphics, that changes the workplace spec that you're looking for. So you don't necessarily want a workstation setup that has, you have to go and put a discrete GPU, because that means that the space saving requirements that you have, or the thermal requirements, or the longevity performance of something, are going to be different. And battery life will be affected with a discrete GPU, power sharing, so on and so forth. You kind of have to understand, it makes sense for the Pro series processors to be aimed at notebooks. The one downside to Ryzen Pro is while they've optimized it for battery life, so on and so forth, and it's all integrated into one silicon package, it does come with a performance hit in that it doesn't include PCI Express lanes in the same number or variant that you can get for the same Ryzen Pro or Ryzen processors on a normal setup.
That's right.
So that's why you usually don't see discrete GPUs in them, is they cut the PCI Express lanes because it's just another security cut for Ryzen to make. Now, I'll cover it because it's necessary to know. Intel has a core line that includes something called Vpro. Intel is the most screwy person to look at when you're saying, what am I really getting here? How does this how does this work? So Vpro is their virtualization type software and security software that they build into their core series. So certain i5s and i7s have it. It's basically for IT professionals to be able to remote into your machine easier. Like encrypted remoting in that makes it simpler for them.
Yep.
So that's really what that's for.
Which does not exist in the same degree on non-pro Ryzen.
Correct. The Ryzen Pro has the same kind of stuff built into it, you know, secure guard, stuff like that. There's a lot of benefits to Ryzen Pro.
It's also not readily available to the general public. Ryzen
correct. And the big thing that you're going to get out of it is enterprise level security, enterprise level manageability. That's what Vpro is to Intel. So, I mean, that's kind of the conversation we're talking about. There's not a whole lot more that you need to know about this kind of stuff. They don't really shoot for high core count stuff on a lot of these things because ultimately, and let's just be completely honest about the conversation, standard workstations that are going to be small form factor or laptops for people, I've never seen an Excel spreadsheet that needed 8 cores.
No.
I mean, yeah, there's some that might benefit with it, but if you're going that hard, you probably should start looking into a better processor anyways. So the big thing to understand with AMD software stacks versus Intel software stacks is the proprietary management of them. Intel's really bad about making things proprietary. So is NVIDIA. And proprietary means they charge you a little bit of money for them. And by a little bit of money, I mean show them the money because it's expensive to manage those things. They're not bad sources, not remotely bad sources, but oh boy. Oof.
What was that Intel thing with RAID, with NVMe RAID? VROC. That's right.
Well, VROC. So VROC is supported in any Intel chip. It's just VROC if you want anything other than RAID 1 or RAID 0.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. You gotta want something other than RAID 1 or RAID 0. If you can live with one of the others, then you're okay. I say all that, get back to it and say this. Let's just stay on the AMD side of things for another second here and talk about Threadripper. So Threadripper is the prosumer version of the consumer Ryzen chip. So it's typically the same Zen generation, except for right now, Zen 2 is still Threadripper. Zen 3 may be coming this fall. There's rumors out there. Who knows when it'll officially show up, how it will officially show up? Anybody's guess. There's no competition in the HEDT space for Threadripper. Just no competition. The only competition for Threadripper right now is in the Xeon workstation space, and Ice Lake can beat it, but it comes at a cost. Now, at a prosumer level, you're not paying for Xeon Scalable. It's too expensive. It's beyond the no consumer should go spend 40 grand on a workstation. Unless you're just, unless you won the lottery. You win the lottery, you and I should talk because we should try to do that together. I'll gladly work on building some workstations with you and make some money on those because that's cheap dual socket workstations. And I mean cheap dual socket workstations are ridiculously priced. But Threadripper supports, and I'm going to move down a little bit on this because Threadripper is different than the core series. So Intel, I'll step back and then I'll step ahead. Intel has their core series, which they also have their Core X series, which is their HEDT parts. The last generation for HEDT is Cascade Lake X, which does not support more than 18 cores. Intel's Cascade Lake series, Cascade Lake X, does not support ECC RAM. Intel's Core series do not support ECC RAM. That may not be a problem for you, but ECC RAM has a capability to go much higher, like to the moon in terms of RAM densities. So if you can go to the moon with RAM densities, then go to the moon with RAM densities. But you can't do that on the Core series. You can go to RDIMM or UDIMM ECC, I should say, on Threadripper. So ECC is error correcting code. And
I think you can do all three of them on some of the boards, WRX80.
It doesn't support it's not so, ECC is not supposed to be supported in RDIMM or LRDIMM for Threadripper Pro. I know some boards kind of have mixed support, and occasionally because of the way
RDIMM.
Because of the way ECC is for the Core series, you can find some motherboards that will probably support Core with the capacities that are a little bit larger in RDIMM. Just you really got to find the right board to do it. Not many boards will do it, and most of the time there's a BIOS release that will brick your board using ECC RAM. So it's strange to think about. Yeah, I probably should walk down and get an ECC stick and bring an ECC, show the differences. But it's not really that important. And then you have Threadripper Pro, which is the workstation line that exists for AMD. Okay, Threadripper Pro is designed for things like the P620 and motherboards like the WR8 motherboard that comes with the Sage setup from Asus. Like,
yep.
It's designed with, it's got more PCI Express lanes than Threadripper. All right,
a lot more.
And the HEDT lines have more than Core, and Threadripper has more than regular Ryzen. Now, all those things that I just said aside, when you really start looking at Threadripper versus Threadripper Pro, the reasons for going for Threadripper Pro is they have a larger product stack. So they started a 16 core with a lot of PCI Express lanes. Ryzen only goes up to 16 cores. Threadripper regular only goes down to 24 cores. So consumer markets are a little different. The other thing that's out there that people kind of tend to miss is Xeon doesn't necessarily get you more PCI Express lanes unless you move to that dual socket configuration. So there's some, misnomers and thoughts about, Xeon versus Threadripper Pro 2. Now, a dual socket Xeon Ice Lake chip setup will give you the same number of PCI Express 4.0 lanes as Threadripper Pro, but it's dual socket again. So you're having two chips, two heat sinks, more to cool, more to go on, more moving, more electrical parts. Pluses and minuses to everything, guys. Epic, however, fits into all this in that Epic is usually lower clocked than Threadripper and Threadripper Pro, but it has all of the features of Threadripper Pro, and it can be dual socket. You just can't find them in workstations usually. They make motherboards that could go into a workstation. You just can't usually find a branded vendor that will provide them. So you have to go custom if you want that. I'm still sitting out here thinking to myself, and Chris, tell me if you know of any, but I don't know of any standard Windows client software that can utilize 128 cores and 256 threads. I'll just go ahead and be honest with you. That's not something people have optimized for.
Windows has problems. At launch, I know that it had serious problems with the 64 core Threadripper. Windows was not registering cores. I didn't know what to do with half the
scheduler was
chip.
having,
Yep.
wasn't it the scheduler and NUMA versus non versus what was that? What's the other one? You have NUMA and something else. I cannot remember what they are.
It was bad.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, to think about, like, why? And
then,
you know, it's like AMD. You launch this product, and it's not even really usable in Windows.
so to go to a 64 core, or go to a dual 64 core, which just wouldn't make any sense.
Oh, not only would it not make any sense, it's just like, how can you utilize it?
Yeah.
Now, Ice Lake solves that because it's going to have NUMA on 40 cores, which is actually more manageable by a workstation. And they tend to be, you know, Intel, while it's lagging behind in core counts, is actually optimizing with Windows. So when and if Intel ever releases something with more than 40 cores, it will probably be optimized in Windows Professional for Workstation, or Windows Professional, whatever you want to say, to where it works. It actually just works with it when it comes out of the box, as opposed to the way Threadripper did things. Threadripper really shook up the industry with the 64 core models. Really shook up the industry. And that's a good thing, because it's pushed core counts higher and made data centers overall cheaper, which is another good thing. But it all gets back down to, can you utilize the software and stuff? So we'll get into that here in a bit. So I mean, Epic and Threadripper Pro, you know, they're basically the same chip, only lower core clocks usually. Now, here's where the confusion comes in. Intel, fix your naming conventions. Seriously. The Core series has so much potential. And then you've got the Core X series, which are your HEDTs, and those make a lot of sense for prosumers. And then you've got Xeon W, which literally goes down to laptop chips now. I kind of liked having Xeon D.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Xeon D was basically your Core i7, Core i5, Core i9 consumer chips with guarantee of Vpro and a guarantee of ECC RAM support.
Yep.
They were the exact same chips, and you knew it.
It was great.
Now everything's in Xeon W, and it is just confusing. It just is. Xeon is a very, very confusing line, and I don't know how to break it down better. Hydration is key. So the big thing to remember with Xeon is, you know, with a Xeon chip, you're going to get ECC support. And error correcting code is basically it comes with basically an extra chiplet set of RAM. So if you ordered a 16 gig chip, for instance, it would come with 4 2 gigabyte chips on a consumer non-ECC model. With ECC, it comes with 10, or not 10. It comes with 5 2 gig chips on a 16 gig, you know, or 5 4. It'd be 8 on a 16 gig, and then 10 on a 16 gig DIMM, same way. But so those ECC chip setups are that extra chip of RAM there is for bit flips. So let's say you have you're working a ridiculous project where you've got RAM loaded in, and you're utilizing a bunch of your RAM, and a solar flare happens that you don't even know about. Your software can randomly crash because of a bit flip in your RAM, because it just doesn't know how to handle that. Now, ECC RAM detects the bit flip and fixes it. It corrects the error in the code. It is error correcting code, RAM. Registered DIMMs versus unregistered DIMMs. An unregistered DIMM is basically just your standard RAM setups. Registered being the primary instance. You're not going to find 128 gig UDIMMs. UDIMMs stick down to the same setups as your standard memory configurations. Standard memory configurations. LRDIMM, low power. So basically,
load reduced.
Load reduced, but
yeah.
Low power is how you remember that. That's I mean, everybody says, oh, it's load reduced. Yes, load reduced registered DIMM. All that really means is that it uses less power for the load. That's that. I mean, I know it sounds silly to say that, but it's designed to be. It's designed to reduce the load on the system from a power perspective when it's loaded. That's really what it's based in. We can dive deeper into that if somebody wants to know, but that's really the general gist of it. Now, we've talked about ECC RAM and non-ECC RAM. Everybody should know that. If you don't and you have more questions about it, feel free to email us or talk in the Discord, and we will talk back. The big thing to remember is know what you're looking for and make sure that if you need ECC, you're getting RDIMM or LRDIMM. UDIMM does you no good in the ECC world.
Good to know.
I love my dogs, but hang on a second. They're wonderful pets, but they like to be loud sometimes. If you hear them scrapping, they're just playing with each other. They're not really mad. GPUs. So I mentioned consumer being Radeon and GeForce. Oh goodness, guys. This is a path that's going to make some people get real confused.
If you thought that processors and consumer versus prosumer versus pro was bad, get ready.
Yeah. Strap in for this rocket ship of a ride.
It's good.
So AMD right now has Radeon. They have Radeon Pro.
Older.
No, that's not older. That's Radeon Pro is the official line. They just haven't released anything for the 6000 series.
Right.
So
that's what,
there's one coming. But Radeon Pro is technically the professional line.
Yeah.
They have a prosumer line. The last one that they released was the Vega 7 Pro. There's supposed to be. I mean, I'm sure there's supposed to be something coming in those lines to replace things. Then you've got their data center. And their data center line, I'm trying to remember, is
Instinct.
It's the Instinct line. Yeah, it's CDNA based.
Yep.
Not RDNA based.
Yep.
RDNA is their graphics processor for Radeon and Radeon Pro. Basically, it's the same as like your Teslas that used to be the data center, and now the A100 and A40 and A10 and A16 for NVIDIA. They don't. The Instinct series won't have and CDNA won't have a display out on them. So they're designed to go into a server that does everything on board and doesn't have onboard video to display out.
Do the Instincts have fans on them?
I'm not sure right now. That they haven't really released anything special. But I do believe there's probably something coming if there's not something there.
So the MI25. That's a Pro Vega FE. That is not an Instinct. What? Does not have a fan. So it looks like
the MI100 is what's out there now.
I was looking at the MI25, but It looks like the data center AMD cards don't have fans, which is pretty normal. They're relying on the fans of the server chassis.
Yep. So and that's something also to talk about. So most server chips have lower TDPs than workstations. That's the way it used to be at Intel, but Intel just pushes and pushes and pushes. So they offer those, they'll offer those high-end chips with a TDP down configuration, kind of like they do with their laptop chips and their desktop chips. It just lowers the clock speeds to make it more manageable, their base clock speeds to make it more manageable from a thermal perspective. And if you've ever been in a data center and listened to server fans, the whine is ridiculous. I mean, literally ridiculous. They crank. And it's okay. That's not a bad thing. Nobody's mad about that. So here's where I'm going to go back in track. So consumer GPUs, are GeForce. The Titan series used to be Prosumer, right? It used to be Prosumer. Now you have the 3090 that they've kind of called their Prosumer chip this generation. It's not really Prosumer because it doesn't come with the
drivers,
same Titan type drivers that are really Prosumer.
Yep.
And I want to go and pull this document up from Adobe and look at it. So what I'm comparing right here is GeForce to Quadro. So your drivers, when it comes to GeForce, they're tuned for some creative apps, some gaming apps, consumer applications. Quadro drivers are usually tuned and set and certified by over the 100 professional standard applications in manufacturing design, architecture, energy, medical industries, just to name a few of them. So you're going to end up with better support from those drivers. They're also designed to last longer. At load, Quadro drivers are. Now, I say that to say this. That doesn't mean a whole lot when you're talking about prosumer. But they did get the prosumer drivers and studio drivers associated with them were better and did not, and worked better with Titan, Yes, GeForce gets studio drivers too, but they're not as good. And they would come out, at the same run every 2 to 3 months. Quadro has its own, or it's not Quadro anymore, but enterprise drivers have their own kind of stack of things that really, really make them professionally driven. One, they have the Quadro experience now, so it's not the same as the GeForce experience. They do support game-ready drivers built in, enterprise cards. Turing and Titan cards supported the same setup. They take more time to develop them. They're tested more. They're tested more with non-creative enterprise apps, whereas you don't get that testing on your GeForce drivers, and it's NVIDIA is going to have true support and tools to make sure you're good. They have monitored support for these things. Like you're paying extra for it substantially. And the best example is the old 5000 series to compare to the 80 series. The 5000 series used to be roughly the 80 series, and that comparison usually meant that the 5000 series was the 80 series with more RAM, VRAM, better frame buffer. And even in, you know, the comparison, that basically everywhere up the stack you go, even from the very bottom of like the Quadro 2000 and 1000 and 600, you got the same as those bottom of the barrel cards and upped them as you went on. Uh-oh, check your phone, Chris.
I have my phone on silent because I don't want it going off in the middle of the stream.
I don't blame you. Mine's the same way. It always happens. There's a lot to it. Uh-oh, you're getting some hearts thrown on you in the chat over here.
As my fiance.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with her chatting with you. I hear you. Hey, she's allowed to talk.
Yeah.
Aren't y'all in the same building?
She's on her way home from work.
Oh, she's bringing you dinner is what she's bringing.
Well, she's gonna bring me coffee, and then we have some dinner here.
Kofefe. Gotta get some kofefe in you. I totally get it. Hey,
I haven't heard
she
that.
says she can bring you dinner. She's saying she can bring you dinner. I would very much like to place an order for dinner, Amanda. Dinner sounds delicious here. I know that's a mildly difficult drive to make, but she's like, sure, what you want? I hear Uber Eats delivers. That's literally what Uber Eats is for. That's correct. It is a wonderful thing. Wow, what a tangent. Gotta love a tangent like that. Hey, she got her attention though. She got in chat and got her attention real quick.
She did. She did.
She knows how to get to you. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Oh boy. Oh, wow.
Go back to our nerd talk, eh?
So Twitch, just a little bit of funny. Twitch blocked nerd. I'm like, for bullying. I'm like,
we are nerds. What do you expect?
Twitch, I am a super nerd. I take offense to you blocking nerd.
I gotta show you. I gotta show you a funny picture. We talk about being nerds, but I still have to show you this funny picture. So go there. I took it the other day. Where's it at? So I don't want to say that I'm cheap, but I'm too cheap to pay somebody to change my brakes when I know how to do it myself. And whatever. Where's the photo? There's the JPEG. Can you see it? Yeah, this is now on the Twitch, so you can see this.
Oh dear.
Yes, this is me getting very greasy, I might say. If I do say so myself, I got very greasy the other day. Pull it over here so it's kind of easier to see.
I gotta open this door. It's too hot in here.
Do it, man. We're just chatting for the 5 people talking to us.
I've got the door closed for the cats, but
hey, my dogs keep coming in and out here going.
This room gets pretty hot with the door closed.
Well, yeah, you have a computer in there that's like mine. I need to take a picture of the way I have my room set up. I have a portable AC unit in here because of myself. Hey,
Toms.
Mechanic by trade. And dude, he's got his E71. He's a good guy. He's a Chevy driver. I mean, I drive a Jeep, so you can see my wheel spacers there.
I drive a Ford, not necessarily because I wanted to, because my vet was broke and I sold it back to them and they put me in a Ford.
Hey, ain't nothing wrong with that. You sold your vet. I like how you said that. You sold your vet and they put you in a Ford.
The vet was broke and I didn't know it. But anyway,
dude, it happens. It happens. We're gonna go down rabbit holes sometimes. We've got a whole nother hour we can work with. And a Saturn view. They don't even make those anymore. Saturns, that is. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. When you turned around, you disappeared from your screen. That's how good background blur.
Wow, that is wow.
So where were we? We were talking about computer things, and then Amanda took us on this tangent about getting food delivered from Uber Eats. Thanks, Amanda. So
I think we were on Titans.
We were on Titans. We were on, and AMD has their own stuff that kind of works into that picture there. And by the way, feel free to ask comments, Tom. Yeah, we love to and make comments to us because we'll laugh and talk with you, go on tangents. It's okay. Nobody's going to be upset by this at all. So Titans are kind of like the baby of the enterprise world. They kind of just gave us like an offset. And I do have an old Titan.
Is that the Titan Black or?
No, it's Maxwell. No, I think this is Titan Pascal, but it's the not XP version. GTX. Yes. It's a GTX. It was the first one to move away from dual DVI, though.
Was that a 6 gig card or an 8 gig card?
12.
12.
Is it the second or third 12 gig card? I can't remember. I got it off eBay for like $200 under the asking price back in the day. Yeah, correct. It was the one everyone nicknamed the XP before they made the actual XP. It was a Titan X Pascal is what they actually started calling it because XP was the upgraded version. I don't remember. Okay, now we're on another tangent here. We're gonna go down this road.
We got to figure out how the Titan changed.
Titan X Pascal. We're going down this tangent. Thank you, Tom, for driving us.
Super confusing.
Tech power up. Here we go. So the Titan X Pascal versus the Titan XP. All right, GP 102 400, so 16 nanometer, 12 gig GDR5X. All right, now I'm gonna keep that one up, and then go over here and go Titan XP, and tech power up. Where you at? Here we go. It was the 450. So the XP had 3840 CUDA cores. The X Pascal had 3584. I'm guessing, if I were a guessing man, that the X Pascal was basically not quite the full generation. How is this XP or was this the Maxwell? I need to look and see. I want to look at Titan X Maxwell and see. New one.
So the XP would have been equal to like a 1080 a Ti.
No, better. So in the XP specs, the 1080, it's 10% faster than the Titan X Maxwell. So here it's a Pascal. So the Titan X Pascal which is not the XP like we're talking about. No, there's actually two Titan X's in the Pascal generation. Oswalk. Gosh, I gotta get these names down. So, all right, I'm gonna bring it up so everybody can.
Yeah.
Gotta change keyboards again.
That's right. Yep, Titan. Yep.
So here we go. I gotta go get my Tech Power Up article again so I can drag it over on the other computer. Yeah, guys, I'm weird. I'm using two computers right now. One so that I can have video and audio and be in the same window as Chris, and the other so that I can deliver this all to everything. So where is my Tech Power Up article? Here it is. All right, guys, bringing this over for you. Mines are going to get blown here. Right there, Titan X Pascal, Titan XP. Pascal was 91%, basically 10% better here. The TI, the reason they released the XP is the TI was actually faster than the Titan X Pascal.
That's right, because they this was when they got the releases a little off for the TI and the Titan.
Yeah, what it was is they released the 1080, and then when they released the 1080 Ti with 11 gigs, its performance is actually mildly better than the Titan. So they had to do the full die of the Titan.
Right.
So, okay, this is a great comparison right here for you too, actually. Great one. So we're getting ready to talk about more drivers, but we're also going to kind of go and flip things back a bit back and talk about the actual video cards of enterprise. So Quadro in the P generation, the P5000, was basically a 1080 with 16 gigs of VRAM. All right. And I'm gonna just show all this stuff because it's more fun. So Quadro P5000. Got to put an extra zero in there. All right. So 2560 CUDA cores. It's the same performance as a 1080. Yep. So the P5000 has always just generally been the 80 series, except for this generation for some strange reason. That's okay. We'll talk about that later. Now, here's where this is going to get unique. So, and they never show it here, but I wish they would. I wish they'd give me the actual go to the GPU database. Let me go Quadro. They only show GeForce over here. I think, yeah. So I want to go NVIDIA. I want to go. There we go. All right. So Quadro P. Where's the P? Where is the P? I need the P here. P6000. Why can't I find the Quadro P6000? There's the A series, the A mobiles. There's the T's. There's the P520. Turing. There's GP. GA. Fine. P6000. All right, so here it is. The P6000 was a 24 gig version
of the 1080
of the Titan XP.
Oh.
So, and if you actually look at this, this had way better performance than the Titan XP. The P6000 actually performed with a 2080. That's why when you heard people say, if you got a Pascal card, you don't really need to upgrade to Turing. That was why, guys. because right here, the Pascal generation really, Pascal was monumental.
Yes.
Maxwell was monumental upgrades. You know, then when you got into the Titans here, they're just kind of in between them. But the Titan XP had the same full 384 cores. So they took this chip, they slowed it down a little bit apparently, because it's not like you see the Titan X Pascal is more than 10% below this. And I'm looking at the Titan XP over here. So let me look at the boost clock, base and boost clock. Base clock on this is 1506. Base clock on the Titan XP was 1405. Boost clock was 1645. Boost clock was 1542. So the base and boost on the Quadro actually was better. Now, obviously, the super generation of the 2080s and stuff were better, but that's just, we don't have to dive into that too much. So I am going to take this page away and go back over here with it. All right, so back into the lovely portions. Back into the actual. So professional, the what used to be called Quadro, which is now Enterprise. So the enterprise side of cards now, which are like the A6000, A5000, A4000, the RTX A6, A5, A4. Those used to be the Quadros. Why NVIDIA dropped the name, I've been told it's a Jensen thing. I've been told a lot of different things. Doesn't really matter. They did it. But the Quadro name and naming convention is a unique way to look at things, and even the enterprise side of things. So Ampere is to NVIDIA as Maxwell was to Turing, or Maxwell was to Pascal. Pascal was a generational leap that just outperformed all the specs. Mm-hmm. A lot of it came to base and boost clock changes that really upped things. A lot, and even more of it came to the other kind of setups as well. So I'm going to go into here real quick and get the 3090 and look at the 3090 in one, and then go to the GPU database, go to NVIDIA, go to generation. No, I'm not going to. I'm just going to do all and go down here because I know how to get to that's the A100s. And I want to go look at the A6000. So you guys have seen the A6000 has a few more CUDA cores. It's got the full 102 die, right? All right. It's got 48 gigs of VRAM versus 24 gigs of VRAM on the consumer. Once again, the biggest thing you always get consumer versus professional, you're always going to get a larger frame buffer. What does that mean or matter to you? Frame buffer is VRAM. You'll hear me, use those interchangeably. It's not necessarily the same thing, but it is. They're interchangeable because the more VRAM you have, the more physical textures and shades and things you can do inside of VRAM. That's why if you listen to other podcasts and whatnot, you might hear somebody talking about frame buffer, a 12 gigabyte, shader count, or 12 gigabyte texture count, meaning you could put bigger textures and better textures into that 12 gig card. That's kind of where we're going with that. You're always going to get more VRAM in a professional card. Now, the 6000 series and the Titan series in the Quadro generation, so the Quadro RTX 6000 and the Titan RTX both had 24 gigs of VRAM. Mm. So the prosumer sometimes comes up to that level. Here's where they differ. Professional and the enterprise chips will always come with ECC RAM available to them. So you get ECC RAM like you get with Xeon and Threadripper Pro. You get that for actual DRAM. For VRAM, you can get ECC as well. It's far less necessary in VRAM because frames go in and out. You might get a frame stutter or something that has to get fixed, but it is a nice thing to have. And if you load up VRAM, it's a very nice thing to have. I don't know many people like myself that can take a 48 gig A6000 and put 48 gigs of, data into the frame buffer and actually use it. I can. I have software that can do that. I did it and had to test it for NVIDIA because they asked me to. So there's also another thing that enterprise is coming with more now and professional will come with. So.
Yep. Spark's on it.
He's on it. Now, Here's the other thing. The other thing people are forgetting is right now in this generation, the biggest difference is G6 versus G6X. G6X is a power mongrel. Oswald, you are right on target there, dude. The G6X is crazy for power requirements. And over that 384-bit bus. So you don't get much more with G6X as well. I know people are like, oh, well, yeah, you can go. All right, I've got 48 gigabytes of VRAM. Why do I need a terabyte a second of bandwidth if I've only got 48 gigabytes to work with? Like that's a lot of, for that power management, it's why AMD in their professional series and their consumer series right now stayed with regular G6. The bandwidth you need is not nearly like things like resizable bar make a far bigger difference, or bigger cache on die make a far bigger effective use of memory than having actually having memory bandwidth itself being that fast. You really can utilize the frame buffer with resizable bar better when you have a bigger, which AMD calls it infinity cache. When you have that bigger infinity cache, you really can utilize your bandwidth for memory better if you have that. But there's perks to everything. Everybody does what they want to do with it. And comically, with G6, with a 384-bit bus, you have faster frame buffers than a 3080 with a 320-bit bus. So your performance is going to vary. But even in relative performance, like right now, looking at Tech Power Up, they call the A6000 100%. They call the 3090 89%. And just so you know, the 3090 clock speeds, which is it's the 102-300, so cut down 102 die. Its base and boost are 1395, and its boost clock is 1695. All right. It has a 350 watt TDP,
which is a lie.
Which is massive, and it has to have a triple slot dual fan cooler for it. Makes putting in multiple cards and NVLinking stuff very difficult. We're going to get to NVLink here in just a second, though. The A6000, care to take a guess what its clock speeds are? I will repeat the 3090s. Base, 1395. Boost, 1695. Wild guess what the base and boost of the A6000 are. With a 300 watt TDP.
I feel like the base is higher, I think.
You're right.
I don't remember what the actual numbers are.
1455 for base. So 1455 versus
1395.
1395. So basically 50 megahertz.
Yep.
That's not a big difference. Here's the big difference. 1695, 1860 is the boost.
That's
on a 50 watt lower TDP with a 2-slot blower card design. blower card. Guys, that yeah,
makes a big difference.
huge difference. So, I mean, granted, let's also.
And it's not the blower, and it's not the blower of your, which would have problems with that much power. It's a new blower.
It is. It's got a hole in the back of the plate, so it actually draws air in from both sides. Pardon me while I sneeze. Golly. Woo, coronavirus. I'm just kidding. Oh man, we just got demonetized. Damn.
We're not even monetized.
I know. I'm being facetious. So Quadro or Enterprise have always been better. Now, I mentioned NVLink before. I'm going to really get into it now. So the 3090 is now the only card. It used to be the 80 series got them as well, and Titan got them too. But the top card only from the consumer space gets NVLink. So it was the 80 series last gen. It's the 90 series this, and all right. In Enterprise, the 5000 series gets it as well. So, and both are dual slot cards. The 5000 and the 6000 are dual slot cards. So the 5000 and 6000 getting NVLink means that they have, with NVLink the way it is set up now, it actually, while you might not see things like SLI used to do, where it would share, do split screen rendering stuff, you might not see that and care about that, frame interlacing to help for game performance. Where it does help is in enterprise applications, you can share the frame buffer. You can share the VRAM. It physically has enough bandwidth between the two to actually share the VRAM. And that's something that is game changing in the workstation space, especially if you're doing, VRAM intensive tasks. That's something you got to look at. Now, we're going to be sad when we think about this. Yes, they are more expensive cards, but they're also designed to last longer. Their drivers run a lot longer. I need to look at it again, but I believe at a minimum they have to give you 5 or 6 years worth of driver life out of your card on professional side. Whereas GeForce, they could go, all right, you know what? We're dropping the 3080 next year. But they wouldn't, but we're going to drop the 2080 next year from drivers because from game ready drivers, for instance. I mean, it's crazy. 6,000 clocks.
5 years. Oswak says five years min.
Yeah, he also is saying they don't have the dynamic overclock to help control power draw. Yeah. Shockingly, it does dynamically overclock faster than the 1860 though. Mine gets up near 2,000 megahertz without adjusting anything. 1980 is what I usually see when it's under full load. As long as it's not hot under full load, I'll see 1960 easy. I'll swap on the A6000. I'm actually using the A6000 right now, so I can say that. Let's see. Now, data center. So the biggest difference from data center is your cards don't come with a cooler most of the time, with an actual active cooler. So there's not a fan. Yeah, yep. Fan free is basically the way you can look at those. And a lot of times being fan free means they're lower TDPs.
Yeah.
So the
the A100 is a weird beast because it comes in different form factors and.
Yeah, I want to go back here now and look.
We're going to omit the A100.
Correct, we are, but we're not going to omit the
A10 and A16. Those are the
A40. We're not going to omit the A40.
that one. Right.
So the A40 is the same as the data center version of the yeah, correct. It used to be called Tesla. Not anymore. Thank you, NVIDIA. But the A40 is the same as the A6000 in terms of CUDA cores, GRAM, VRAM, and the bus. Everything is the same. Now, it is downclocked as well because it doesn't have as much push through of the air. So,
and it doesn't have video outs.
Correct.
Yep. So then somebody might be asking, well, why the heck would you buy an A40?
Well, the answer is pretty simple. Shockingly, the answer is you're putting it in a server. Now you can put an A6000 in a server, and they actually make an A6000 passive cooled.
Yeah.
But the A6000, the reason you put a passively cooled card in a server is because the server fans alone are moving so much air throughout the entire chassis that you don't need a fan. Like they have to move that much air in general to keep things cool. That's really the only difference.
Yep.
That's why passive coolers typically go on data center stuff. And that's basically the gist of it. Data center stuff is designed that way. So
yep.
Look at it any other way you want to look at it. Now, whole machine setups. So branded, and when I say branded, like box, yes, data center GPUs. When I say, well, I mean, would you call it a GPU? So there's other names they go by too. So
because it might not be graphics.
It's I know that. No, but what's the name of those things? What are FPGAs called?
ASIC?
Not ASIC cards, but like accelerators. They're accelerator cards. Data center accelerator cards.
Yeah.
Yep. Those are the data center GPUs. You got them on the list right there. But accelerator cards as well,
like a V100, a P100. Oh yeah, Phi.
Xeon Phi.
Forgot about that one.
Basically a CPU, a CPU on a graphics card. It's an accelerator card. Ta-da! That's what they do. Once again, no fan. Straight pass through. Do I have any screws in this thing? No, I do not. So that's what a passive cooler really looks like on the inside, guys.
I can't see it very well. There you go. Oh.
I got to keep it where it shows my face so I can see it. Yeah. Copper heatsink in the middle for the actual GPU, the actual major components, and the rest of it's just a normal heatsink.
Aluminum, yep.
Yep, just normal aluminum heatsink. But accelerator cards are used for, like FPGAs, and this card are used for accelerating certain tasks. You usually will never see these run in Windows. Now, I've gotten this to run in Windows. It doesn't do a whole hell of a lot, but I've gotten it to run in Windows. That's a fact. You got to have specific code written to do stuff with them in Windows.
Okay.
That's
what I thought.
I think what else? What else would you see? GPUs. This is something else that consumer GPUs will do, and Titan GPUs used to do, going back to the Titans of yesteryear. Remember the Titan X Black?
Yeah. That was
dual GPU. 2 GPUs on one PCB.
That's a Titan Z.
Yeah, that was right. That was the Titan Z. You're right. Correct. It was 2 GPUs on one motherboard.
Yep.
And this is a GTX $295.
That's a 295.
That's a 295.
Holy cow! How old is that thing?
2007.
Jeez.
That's when I bought it. I don't know if it was released in 2007. I can go back and tell you though.
Because the last dual GPU card that they made was a 690.
GTX 295. Oh, switch computers again, Brad. GTX 295. There it is. GT 200B. Yes. This one didn't even have HDMI, guys. It had 2 DVI ports. This is the like Asus variant.
Was that a 4 gig or a 6 gig?
3 gig.
3. Oh my gosh.
1.5 gigabytes per GPU, boys. All right, relative performance. You're gonna love this one. You want to know what the one above it is at 101%? Take a guess.
A 480?
No. It's above a 470. It is below a 4. No, what's 480? GTX or RX?
Oh, 480. I'm sorry, a GTX.
I don't see the GTX 480 on here right now.
Yeah, because it's.
I'd have to find
massively
it.
Old. That was
relative performance.
For me,
650 Ti.
That's the same as the 650 Ti.
This is the same as the 650 Ti. It's actually as good as a Radeon HD 6950.
Oh God.
Wow. Yep.
And that probably cost about $1,000.
No, it was $500.
Wow.
Top of the line cards back then were not near as expensive as they are now.
Not like a 3098.
Yep. And when we talk about blower cards, y'all, this is your standard blower card. Got a fan here, pulls air in at the back, pushes it out of the front, back of the card if you really want to think about it. What's pointing out the back of everything? All right. And NVIDIA, so doesn't matter where you buy. So here's the biggest difference too between professional and consumer is you hear them talk about reference cards. And in case you're wondering, this is a Quadro K5200. It had 8 gigs of VRAM. Kepler, it was the Kepler generation.
Yeah, that's why it was K.
Yep.
See, it was so easy back then.
It was memorizing what things were, and they had the K5000, which was a 4 gig card. I do have one of those laying around here somewhere. I had a K5000. So the first Quadro card that I actually had bought was a K5000 with 4 gigs. Then I went to the 5200. Then I went to the P5000. After that, I skipped Maxwell. And I've got a bunch of P5000s laying around here from work. But the purpose of this whole conversation is recognizing and realizing here's where I was starting to go and stop. But professional GPUs and data center GPUs are all actually manufactured by NVIDIA. You hear the reference card design from, board partners for consumer. The reference card designs are sent as just the board to the manufacturer, and then they put their own cooler on it and call it a day. Professional cards, however, are everything about them is manufactured by NVIDIA. They send it to their board, their true reseller, or they send it to HP or your branded, machines that they're going into, and they physically slap a sticker on the back that says it's from that company, and it goes in the machine. There is no build or anything done on a professional card or a data center card, for that matter, by anybody but NVIDIA, or for that matter of fact, AMD. Same way. They ship the card. So basically, that's another reason that they're more expensive, is because basically it's all done by NVIDIA internally. So they send them over to their manufacturer. They test them that it works, slap a certification sticker on it, and send it out the door. Don't ask me why, but that's what they do. That's why if you look at professional cards right now, they're all PNY in the United States, because PNY is the partner that has been there with NVIDIA for forever. They literally just buy the card from NVIDIA, slap a sticker on it, and sell it out the door. So what do they call the ones that NVIDIA makes of GeForce? The Founders Edition. They're basically Founders Edition.
Yeah.
And that's the way it goes. So, but back to whole machines. So you can get a whole machine from a Box, a Dell, a HP, Lenovo. I'm trying to think. There's a lot of them out there. Then you can get a custom designed one from somebody like Chris at Top Flight, who's going to go out there and find off the shelf parts to put together through his distributors and build a machine for you. What's the difference? Well, just about every branded machine I have has very little configuration on your end. So while you might be able to swap graphics cards, add or remove RAM, maybe swap a CPU on a branded machine, your cooler, you're stuck with it. Unless you get an upgraded cooler from eBay or from the manufacturer itself, the cooler you're stuck with is what you got.
The board in particular. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. And when I talk about the cooler, as whole machine, you know, we talk laptop, desktop, and rack for the whole setup as well. When you're buying a branded machine, laptops are always going to be branded usually. I mean, customized laptops from somebody like Chris are just hard to come by. Yeah. Not because Chris can't do it. It's just the customization from that end of things for him to build it for you. Sometimes it's cost prohibitive. Will that change based on the current market? Possibly. But component selection is always going to be different when it's branded. Like you're picking through it. And I like to use this. So go to Dell, go to HP, go to Lenovo, or go to Box. Take the time while we're talking about this and listen to us while we talk, and go to these sites and pull these configurators up. So you pick a base model that you want to work off of, and you want to customize it some. So you want to add a CPU. 9 times out of 10, if you go from a base model CPU, and I'm going to use Threadripper Pro with Lenovo right now. So you go from the base model 12-core Threadripper Pro CPU, and you want to go up to the 32-core. You're probably going to pay the price of the 32-core if you bought it by yourself, or very, very close to it. So it's like, why is it even that way? It's purely that way because that's how they're making their money on things. They have a base price that they work from, and then adding parts and prices to it only increases the cost. So you have to basically, their base price includes all the sales and overhead they have to pay. And then you get into those other components, and it's just you're paying for the component to be added. And that goes for, I mean, I've literally seen going from a Quadro 2000 to a Quadro RTX 6000 costing the exact price of the RTX 6000. Like, why? That doesn't make sense to me, but that's how it works. All right. Your environmental footprint that goes along with that. Like, these folks are manufacturing things, custom shops going and actually buying all the parts and components individually. So they're not going to have this stockpile of things. There's an environmental footprint effect to it. You know, that's something to think about especially if you're a corporation. I mean, the corporation I work for, environmental footprint is a huge deal. It just is. Power requirements. Customized setups, because you could look at a smaller board or a less power, lower VRMs, so you don't have as much power delivery for a CPU or a GPU. So overall, it doesn't draw as much power. You can actually have lower power requirements from a non-branded machine with a custom machine. And that goes, and laptops are the same way. When you think about a laptop, I don't have one down here. I might walk downstairs and actually get one of my 250 watt power bricks that I have for Dell laptops. Dude, they're huge. Now, laptops are going to be more power efficient than desktops. The parts have to be, because they have to be able to run on a battery for at least an hour. I mean, I'm not saying that they can't run for longer, but when you get a big boy workstation laptop, don't expect it to have a 8-hour battery life.
No.
I mean, you're not putting some rinky-dink ARM chip in this thing to run it. And maybe Alder Lake that comes from Intel in the fall or whenever it releases, maybe that, because it's going to have a big little core design, maybe that changes things a little bit for us. But not really. Cooling requirements are the other thing too. And I have to give credit to the branded machines. They generally do a good job of it, but you don't usually get water cooling options. And if you do, you only have one. So, and
it's probably not very good. Yeah.
I don't want to say that. While I don't like the branded ones from like Alienware, which is Dell, or HP or whatnot, Box's water cooling options, and Puget Systems does some decent water cooling. I don't want to take them away from that thought process.
It's all right. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
But you're not going to find a custom loop that's really going to cool every component. And cooling requirements lead to, like Chris just mentioned earlier, he sits in his room with his door closed. It gets hot in there.
It gets hot.
When you run anything HEDT or better, you better expect it to get toasty. It's going to happen.
If you have a 1,000-watt power supply in your monster computer and it's pulling, upwards of 1,000 watts, where do you think that all that power is going? It's going in the air in the form of heat.
It has to dissipate somewhere. It physically has to dissipate somewhere.
Has to.
And so your selections are always worse going for branded. So I mean, when you talk about Chris and what Chris does with Top Flight, like, it really does make a difference, guys. Whether you know it or not right now, your options can be so much better on that selection side of things. Now, there are ways that you can put different coolers in a Dell machine, or I have done it before. I don't like doing it because usually the coolers and it's not the coolers so much as it is the fans, guys. It's the fans that are the issue. So they have their fan headers that come off the motherboards for Lenovo, for instance. If you go put a Noctua cooler in a Lenovo machine, you're going to still have to use the stock cooler. Or the stock cooling fan on that Noctua cooler somehow. Whether it be zip ties or rubber bands. And if I opened up my old D30 from Lenovo, I could show you rubber bands. Actually, no, it was twist ties on that one. It wasn't zip ties, twist ties. You got to do something to get that fan on there, because if not, it says, "Oh, we don't detect we don't detect an actual fan, CPU fan. We're not going to run." Yeah, it's a big deal. Now, I will say this, and this is something unique now. With the way Threadripper and Xeon have moved, those workstations, a lot of them don't have fans on the cooler. They run a passive setup where they actually run a channel of air from different zones of intake fans, and you can control those zones independently. And they blow air through much like a server does, but just with larger fans, so it's quieter. So that's another thing to think about. But they don't put a fan on the physical cooler. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I do want to go and talk about Tiger Lake B for a minute before we get done. We only got a little while left.
Yep.
We can, like I said, if we got to break it up into 2 hour session, 2 single hour sessions or hour 10-minute sessions, that's fine too, Chris. So one of the things we covered 2 weeks ago was Tiger Lake H versus Rocket Lake. Well, lo and behold, Intel decided they wanted to very, very quietly, without telling anybody, launch a B SKU of Tiger Lake. What is a B SKU? I don't know. Don't tell me. But they have an 11900K B. So you know how they have the 11900K and 11900KF. Those are the standard SKUs, right? Well, the 11900K B is a Tiger Lake CPU. It is 65 watt TDP. All right. It has the same specs as the Tiger Lake H, with the exception of at 65 watts, if you've got the cooling capacity, it will stay turboed on 2 cores to 5.3 gigahertz. Why does that number sound familiar, Chris? Why does 5.3 gigahertz sound familiar? What else turbos to 5.3 gigahertz?
Wasn't that Tiger Lake Mobile i7?
No. I'll give you a hint. It has 11900K in the first name, in the first part of it. Yes, indeed, a 65 watt TDP Tiger Lake B, 11900K B, turbos to the same speed as an 125 watt Rocket Lake 11900K. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, I asked the question, Intel, feel free to give me a call. Why did you make Rocket Lake? What in the flying flip were you thinking? I mean, what in the ham sandwich was going through your mind? Rocket Lake.
Hence the last podcast episode.
Yeah, the whole last podcast. Please go watch that for your spare time, or listen to it while you're riding down the road or something like I do with video podcasts and just listen to it. You'll understand. It makes no sense to me to have Rocket Lake out there when Tiger Lake on 10 nanometer is just as good in terms of turbo speeds at 65 watts and is so far less power hungry. Like, not even I wanted to originally say it's not even like, I was thinking, okay, you could maybe get a 95 watt TDP to go 5.3. No, you went and figured out how to frickin' do it on a 65 watt part. What are you what have you guys been smoking?
The good stuff.
So here's the literal conclusion you can draw from this. Rocket Lake did get an IPC uplift of like 10%. Tiger Lake has like a 10 or 15% uplift over Rocket Lake. So we were claiming to the fact that the mobile chips wouldn't be as fast as the gaming chips, as the consumer chips, guys. And so the 5 gigahertz versus 5.3 is where Rocket Lake would actually still be better. Then Intel goes and does this and says, you know what, Rocket Lake, peace, girl, we're done. Like, wow. Also, this past week, if you watched anything from Computex, lovely, like the 3080 Ti launched, and was for sale today, actually. Newegg did a shuffle today with the 3080 Ti. So that's something to think about. They also have the 3060. I believe it comes in a week or two. I think it's the 10th. I might be wrong, Chris. The 3070 Ti, sorry.
Yeah.
Which is basically a little bit better. The 3070 Ti, guys, really? I mean, yes, it's $600. If you want the 3070 Ti that badly, though, seriously, just go buy the A4000. For $300 more, you can get an A4000, which has double the VRAM. And
Which
it's
is
the
not-
same exact chip and has less power draw. Go
No,
get an
it's not.
A4000.
Although it's not currently available yet. Soon.
But exactly,
TM.
if you're waiting on the 3070 Ti, just wait and
wait.
get the A4000. It makes more sense, guys. And I did want to provide an update on this because we briefly covered it in the last episode, but there's some more details that have come out since then. The light hash rate locks are not physically a software lock anymore. They're actually hardware locks. We kind of covered it some last time, but this has a downstream effect that no one's really talking about, but people are really, I'm sure people are thinking about it, but they're not talking about it. And that is light hash rate makes a difference for folks, and it's CUDA based. And NVIDIA can mean, what NVIDIA can do with that is if they see that their professional or enterprise cards aren't selling because the 3090 and 3080 are doing all this work for them, they can find a way, guys, to physically cripple CUDA performance in professional tasks. All they have to do is make the LHR hardware lock effective in one other area on CUDA. It reads a different line of code from a software, and that 3080 is going to be worth basically less than an A4. An A4000 is going to destroy a 3080 or 3090 in professional workloads. 3080 Ti, 3090, whatever you want to look at it. So 3080 Ti, I should say, because that's how NVIDIA called it. It's 3080 Ti. I didn't know that. I thought it was just Ti. I think the entire community calls it Ti. But yeah, the LHR locks that are on all new cards, basically any card shipping this month now, check what you're buying before you buy it, because it's going to have this LHR lock on it. The only cards I know that won't are the 3090s. So 3080 and below, you better be shopping around and making sure what you're buying isn't an LHR card, especially if you're buying from a third-party seller like eBay or something. Be very, 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 very into that. I am going to go and say this. Chris, if you'll put it back up to the link tree one more time so everybody can see that. Feel free to. LHR cards will be labeled LHR. But you hide and watch. Those LHR cards being labeled LHR isn't going to stop people on eBay for not putting LHR next to the listing. I would not be surprised in the minutest event that an LHR card goes on eBay and somebody buys a card thinking it's not LHR, and it shows up and they're like, why is this thing suck mining? Even though you shouldn't be buying a GeForce card to mine anyways, but they will get you on that. And if you're trying to buy a card to game, you really don't care. And as of right now, if you're trying to buy an LHR card for professional work, it really doesn't matter. Just be aware in the future, I wouldn't be surprised if NVIDIA started making some hardware restrictions to some of the performance metrics in professional tasks, especially enterprise professional tasks like CAD. Because I've seen times when a Quadro 2000 will beat a 60 series card, not a 70 series, but a 60 series card, and they're priced about the same. So just keep that in the back of your mind, guys. There's a reason for buying professional cards. It's always going to be your best bet if you're going to try to have as much uptime as possible as well. Professional products in general, Xeon, Threadripper Pro, Ryzen Pro, Epic, they're always going to be better if you want that uptime. Enterprise RTX. Actually, no. These, if you look at you're right. It was supposed to be software limited. There are physical hardware changes that were made to these cards now. There is a physical hardware piece that has to run code prior to the chip now that was added. Yeah, there's some documentation out there, and I should have prepared myself with that information, but I'll try to find it and we'll put it in the link, put a link to it somewhere. Maybe have it out on Discord if you guys want to check it out. But it is looking hardware wise. The hardware is looking for code, and if it sees code, it cripples the CUDA functionality. That's what it is. And maybe device ID, but yeah. And so the answer to your question is there is a software workaround. It's to not use CUDA. It's to use OpenCL. That's the workaround that's probably being worked on. But everything uses CUDA, from, Autodesk apps to,
Adobe
uses CUDA. Yeah, all those things use CUDA. There's a way that I'm you got to look into the future to understand that it's all about money to NVIDIA. And with AMD actually catching up in the gaming performance realm, they're going to look for every way to make as much money on the consumer side while also making more money on the professional side. Because, we talked about the difference between an A6000 and a 3090. The A6000 MSRP 3 times as much. 3 times. NVIDIA makes its money on it. That's NVIDIA's goal, is to make money on professional hardware. And they do. But there's nothing that says that they won't find a way to make you have to go buy that stuff eventually. I don't think they will for certain tasks and applications, but you've been forewarned. Prepare yourself for the future for that. We've been going for a little over 2 hours. Yeah, Pro is built to run. Now, you know what? We're talking. So I'm here to talk at this point. And Oswalk wants to talk, so I want to talk, Chris. Yes, Pro is built to run 24/7. GeForce is not. Oswalk, you can tell me, have you ever had a GeForce card crash that ran 24/7 for a while? Because I haven't personally. If I were dumb and put the cooler back on this card, it still works just fine. I mean, it's slow as Christmas in anything. You know what? I'm going to go down. We're going down the rabbit hole again, Chris.
Oh, dear.
Where's the map? Where is it? A 3090 versus the 295.
Oh, God. That's like 1,000% difference. Like, why would 1,000 times?
You know what, Oswalk? So you have had a card die after a year. You would be the first person I've talked to that has had that happen. I'm gonna have to update my specs to 1. I now know 1 person that has had a card die after a year of use. I've never had that happen yet, and everyone I've talked to, and I'm not saying I've talked to 10 people. I've probably talked to thousands of people and asked this question. Laptop, desktop, all across the board, said, you ever had a card that just, lack of better word, shit the bed? And every time I've asked that, I can't think that I have. Now, okay, Oswalk, here's a better question for you. Did you overclock the card? That's my next question for you. Did you overclock the card? So, performance metrics, according to Tech Power Up, what's a percentage you think that the 3090 is faster than this?
Oh, God.
If this is 100%, how many times faster? I'll give it to you that. How many times faster than this is a 3090?
20 times. I'm guessing.
You went high. You went high on me, my man. It is 9.5 times faster. 953% faster than a 295 is a 3090. Oh, boy. That's a big difference. It's a very big difference. Yeah, I would like to know the Oswald. If you overclock that card, that'd be interesting to know. Because that's a unique thing to hear that somebody's had a card crash. Like you've truly piqued my interest. Maybe one day I'll sell these things because right now this is just one giant paperweight. You know, we have GA as the numbers for now, like GA 102. This chip is the G200-400 B3. The other chip is the G200-401 B3. Wow, it even shows that the 401 and 400. That's crazy. Oh, another fun fact for you. What nanometer was this manufactured on?
40 something?
55.
Oh my God. Wow.
This thing is gargantuan.
Well,
But
let's.
would you care to know what made it work? That right there.
What is that?
There's a little chip right there. You can't see it, but it is an NVIDIA NF200. It is a PCI Express bifurcation switch.
Huh.
On card. And comically, the first computer I ever had this in had a motherboard with a South Bridge that had a GeForce chip on it as well. People forget that. NVIDIA used to make South Bridges. The interconnect between which carried PCI to the computer. The NF200 was used a lot of times to give PCI Express lanes to the actual computer. But yeah, let's wrap this up.
Yep.
2 hours and 7 minutes. It may take a while to upload. We'll try it as one. If it doesn't upload as one, we'll upload it as part 1 and part 2.
Yep.
It's been a good talk. We are going to have a mid-month episode this month that will have a guest.
Yeah. It's gonna be should be a pretty fun episode.
Oh, we got an Oswalk response.
Oh, God.
He keeps us talking. Thanks, Oswald. Every time we want to leave, you want us to talk more. So OC maybe, but running higher than 80% load. Well, yes, I would agree with that statement. Anytime you run something, and now the problem is that people forget is that you can go in and replace the thermal paste, maybe get a different CPU cooler on it, put a water block, and a lot of times that performance will come back. Because you're not killing integrated circuits. The circuits are still fine. They've just been overheated forever that the thermal paste and the thermal interface material has degraded.
Right.
And miners are also always refreshing their parts because, you know,
it's faster.
Better parts make things faster, make them more money. So yeah, there are opportunities in there, Oswalk. I would never buy something that I knew somebody mined on. Because I wouldn't want to spend the time. I say that. I wouldn't want to spend the time pulling a card apart, redoing all the thermal paste, redoing a cooler, checking the cooler out, making sure the fans are working properly, cleaning all the dust out of it, all that other stuff. There are ways to bring them back to life. But yeah, if you're even, and I will say this too. Somebody running, and Chris, maybe you can chime in on this, but if you got a guy that's running a rendering farm utilizing A6000s 100% of the time, after a year, they're going to degrade in speed because they're just going to have been hot for so long. That's not to say that the actual cards are bad. That's just to say that after time, the cooling has degraded. So But that's a present fact for any card that runs at that kind of, capacity and pressure for that long. And the environment that it's running, is it running a clean room? Is it running a house that's got massive dogs? Yeah. What I was getting at though is I've never seen a physical chip fail. Cooling is always and to your point, cooling will cause the chip to fail. If the card can't cool enough, eventually something has to give. They're only designed with thermal, and you can only downclock so much before you're hitting your base clock again, and it's not worth it. Like I said, I've just never seen a card directly fail due to normal operation, is what I was getting at. And normal being not mining. Yeah, and that makes sense. Yeah, like I said, but there are reasons to see cards fail. Oswalk, are you a miner? Do you have a bunch of 3080s we can buy from you? I'm kidding. Back to wrapping it up, though, Chris. We will do a live in-person show before the 4th of July where the two of us are sitting in the same room, shockingly.
Yeah, because I'm in North Carolina and Brad is in South Carolina.
On the opposite end of the South Carolinian state. Chris knows who you are. Chris knows.
Oh, I know who Oswalk is.
I know. I'm being facetious. I'm trying to be it for all the everybody's. Not everybody sees these comments, Oswalk. That's too. At some point, Chris, we may want to look at switching back to YouTube just for the comments side of things. But
so the comments show up in Twitch.
Oh, that's true. That's because we've got them showing up on the side of the page next to my face right now. Let me get behind some comments.
All right. So the next episode is going to be sometime in the middle of the month.
We don't know the time yet, but keep your eyes out on the Facebook. Check out the link tree. We'll get a date out there. And then the July 2nd episode, like I said, we'll have Chris and I in the same room. You might get jealous of us with a lovely background of a beach. I'm not going to say where because I don't want everybody coming to hang out with us. But Chris and I are going to make us a little road trip and hang out together, and we'll do the podcast there. We might have some interesting guests as part of the podcast that week, just because people that might be with us might decide to stroll in and conversate with us. You might also hear Mario Kart in the background a lot that week too. But yes, we are looking forward to it, guys. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Brad.
I'm Chris.
Have a wonderful evening, and we'll talk to you soon.